Sleaford Mod's UK Grime album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this latest album from Sleaford Mods, aka the UK-based duo of Jason Williamson as well as Andrew Fearn. And the mod style, it's tough to explain. There are elements of post-punk, just gritty sort of DIY punk rock, but there's also a lot of spoken word influence as well as just, oh god, I don't know, some off-kilter hip-hop. I'm doing my best here, guys. Their style has always been a little hard to, I don't know, narrow down to one certain genre or a certain sound. They've had such a unique, different sound since their debut. And in their early days when they were dropping these sort of very DIY, raw, sample-heavy albums like their self-titled, as well as The Meccan and The Originator, I thought they had a really interesting style. They blended classic samples as well as really minimalist beats, all with alongside Jason's very fiery, in-your-face, pissed-off rants. And at the time, I was absolutely enamored. I remember texting my friends saying that this was probably the most genuinely punk thing that I'd heard in years. And I was very curious to see how they would kind of tackle a bigger album, a more polished album. Or at least a slightly more polished album, because I don't think we've ever gotten anything truly polished from the mods. But we started seeing that around 2013's Austerity Dogs, which I did enjoy quite a bit. And yeah, at the end of the day, I did kind of miss their wild use of sampling and the DIY, very raw nature of their early recordings, but through their sheer concentration, focused, and just straight up anger, they did win me over still with the album. But if anything, I was more really captivated by albums like Divide and Exit or Key Markets, which I still think is probably their most consistent album from start to finish. Now, for a while, I don't want to say that I kind of lost track of Sleaford Mod's sound, but for a while I thought I was just kind of lukewarm to their music. English Tapas as well as Eaten Alive, both of them I just thought were very safe albums. There were certainly great moments on there, but as a project, I thought that they were maybe going soft. And that goes double for their Spare Ribs album, which came out a few years back. I thought it was okay, but I thought that the band needed just, I don't know, just get a little amped up again, kind of rejuvenate themselves. Or at the very least, get refocused. And leading up to this album, I thought I had come across that just because I thought the singles were really decent. Probably some of the more decent singles that I've heard from them in quite some time. And lo and behold, on this album, they do refocus and put out some of their finest work in some time. UK Grim, this album's title track, is a great intro. I love the tension here. Jason's very fiery performance is on point. The very minimalist beat is appreciated as well, even though they are a little crisper sounding these days. But while this doesn't remind me completely of those early recordings that I loved so much, it definitely has the same spirit. It's gritty, it's pissed off, and it just really gets me in the mood to listen to more Sleaford Mods. Then we have D.I.Why, and once again, I have to point out, their music is a little bit cleaner these days. You definitely hear that in the beat here. But I think compared to what they were doing on albums like English Tapas or their last album Spare Ribs, I do enjoy this a lot more here. The tension is great, and while this is one of the more on the rails tracks here, I still think it's an awesome critique on the modern DIY scene. For a less intense track, this absolutely works, and I'm just impressed at just how focused Jason and Andrew sound. Force 10 from Navarone, this is a nice surprise. This track features Florence Shaw of dry cleaning fame, and I think it's a great collaboration. I love the upbeat riff that we get here. It gets back to that sort of post-punk sound that they had. And Florence Shaw, while I always want to hear more from her, she's always going to be welcome on a track in my book. Her very heady, wordy, visual experience is right at home. I'm going to be honest, after their last few albums, I was not expecting much from this album, but I kind of feel like an idiot saying that. Tilldipper, on the other hand, is one of the most overtly punk tracks here. This one's a rager. Jason is fired up up here. God, his rant is blink and you'll miss like 10 details, but that's why I love hearing him. And Right Wing Beast, as far as a deep cut, it may be my favorite track here. This track reminds me so much of their early sample-driven performances. I just, like, this track's got a little dustiness to it. It's got that rawness to it. I love Jason's performance here. It's so sharp, and this riff is really hypnotic. And it's also got that just spit-in-your-face, rebellious attitude that I've always enjoyed. This is the Sleaford mod sound that I've always enjoyed. Now, I do love a lot of what they're doing on this album, but this is not a complete return to form. We have tracks like On the Ground, which is, I think, the worst track here. The synths on this track, what is going on here? This instrumental just pisses me off more than anything. It is so annoying, and Jason's performance, which is usually the star of the show, it just takes second banana here, and it's really aggravating. And while I do love the Sleaford mod sound, it is a little bit of a slippery slope, so to speak. Take, for example, Smash Each Other Up. This track is not very good, and when one slight thing goes wrong, the rest of the track just kind of, I don't know, falls apart. This beat is so ineffective, and as a result, Jason just sounds bored. I mean, the beat progresses and all in a weird way. It almost sounds like an early 2000s Blockhead beat, but at the end of the day, like I said, they sound more bored than pissed off here. And Don, honestly, this track should work because it has all the characteristics of a truly great mods track. But I would be lying if I said that this track really stuck with me. It just overall sounds like Sleaford mods from a distance, but if you look closer, they're kind of playing it safe here. And I, Claudius, is just boring for me. This instrumental, what happened here? Why does it sound like Sleaford mods are rapping over an unused water level from Donkey Kong Country? But it's more than just that. You know, I've heard Jason on tracks like this get really fired up and still end up, driving home his point. But once again, he just sounds bored here. He sounds stoned. He doesn't sound pissed off. Thankfully, though, I do feel like the rest of the album is really impressive. And while not perfect, I do think that Sleaford mods haven't sounded this focused in quite some time. And I think that this is the best material they've put out in a while. So Trendy. Wow, this is an odd collaboration. Here, Sleaford mods team up with Dave Navarro and Perry Farrell. And I think what's the oddest thing about this track is just how well it comes off between Perry's ad-libs and his eventual vocals and Dave's guitar playing. It does enough to just spice up this album a little bit. It brings a little energy back to this album. It makes you think that you don't know what you're going to hear just next. And I needed a track like Pit to Pit. I needed a rough and tumble punk rock track that just sounds off the rails, and this is a good one. This bass riff is fantastic. Jason sounds full of piss and vinegar. It's gnarly, it's nasty, it's in your face. It ends up being one of the best examples of the great classic Sleaford mod sound here. It's great. Apart From You is really good too, even if Jason's vocal performance is not my favorite from his. I mean, I don't know, this might just be me. I would rather hear him on a blistering rant than try singing a little bit. But between the hypnotic bass riff, the intensity of this track, the songwriting, it does end up working at the end of the day, and I really do enjoy it. And then we get Tory Kong. What is this? This has been an album of Sleaford mods kind of returning to their roots. And then we get this, which is easily the weirdest and most experimental track on this album, and from them in general that I've heard in a while, but it is really, really good. Like this beat, where is this coming from? This sounds like late 90s Aphex Twin on this beat. It's colorful, it's intense, it's vibrant, and then we get Jason's very blistering rant on top of it, and you got a hell of a sound. And Rhythms of Class. What is this now? Where is this coming from? This sounds like Jason rapping over, an late 80s, early 90s golden age hip-hop beat that's been really warped. And yeah, I do wish this track was a little fired up, I don't know, but still, it ends up succeeding in other ways. The big one being, this is a long track. In their discography, I can't really remember a plus 5 minute track from the mod. But the looming bass, the dreamy guitars, and Jason's performance make it all come together in a really weird way. I'm impressed with this album. It's not a complete return to form, and there are still some things that I do miss about their early days. But that's just me nitpicking. Most of the material on this album I mean, more good than bad. They seem refocused, refired up. They sound like they're firing on all cylinders and reminding me what I loved about the band for so many years. We even get some weirdo experiments towards the end that I'd like to hear some more of. No, it's not perfect, but this is easily the most focused the mods have sounded in quite some time. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.